I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
Tao Te Ching 12. The 5 colors make one blind in the eyes. The 5 sounds make one deaf in the ears. The 5 flavors make one tasteless in the mouth. Racing and hunting make one wild in the heart. Goods that are difficult to acquire make one cause damage. Therefore, the sages care for the stomach and not the eyes. That is why they discard the other and take this. Okay, 12. Chapter 12 of the Tao Te Ching, only 7 lines, but there's a whole world of meaning embedded in these 7 lines. Let's explore. First, as usual, let's take a look at the Chinese characters, see if perhaps visually we can recognize some of the same characters being repeated from line to line. Just by looking at the English, you can see make one, these 2 words, make one, make one, make one, make one, being repeated 5 times. So we would expect to locate them in the Chinese characters as well. If this is a faithful translation of the original, then that would be the case. So let's go to the repeating characters in the first 3 lines. We have the first character being the same, then we have the 3rd and 4th characters being repeated up and down. So the first character, that is the Chinese character for 5, the number 5. So 5 appears here in the beginning of every line. And then the 3rd and 4th characters, you would probably guess, and you will be right, that they correspond to make one. So with those being explained, you can then tell that the 2nd character here in line 1, well, that will be the Chinese character for colors. You will be correct. And then the last 2 characters will be blind in the eyes. So it's the same with line 2, the 2nd character there will be sounds. The last 2 characters will be deaf in the ears, and so on to line 3, where the 2nd character will be flavors, and the last 2 characters will be tasteless in the mouth. So line 3, I'm going to focus on, especially when we get to the line-by-line explanations. Reason being, the very last character of line 3 in modern Mandarin has a positive connotation, like, refreshing. But that's not what it actually meant 2,500 years ago in this particular usage, in this context. And I'll explain why. But first, by these repeating characters, we can tell that they belong in the same section together, like that. So let's look down further to 4, 5, 6, and 7, see what we can find there. Okay, so unlike 1, 2, and 3, we no longer have the first character repeating itself. However, we're still seeing the same pattern with the 2 characters in the middle of the line. We see them again here and here. And indeed, these 2 lines still have make one, the 2 English words that were used to translate. And indeed, and these 2 lines are longer than the regular length of 1, 2, and 3. They each have 6 characters, and these are longer than that. So we can now tell that these two lines probably belong together. And when we look down further to line 6, we don't see the repeating patterns anymore. So that gives us a pretty solid clue that we have a repeating line. We have a section in the middle, right in the middle there, like that. Then by this process of elimination, we can tell that the last two lines, 6 and 7, are simply the concluding lines of 12. And even though the last two lines do not have the corresponding characters or the matching translations, by looking at the meaning, care for the stomach and not the eyes, we see that as a match, not syntactically, in terms of meaning, to discard the other and take this. And if you prefer, you can also say, discard that and take this. It will mean the same thing. Okay, so now we have the 3 sections of 12. And as you know, we do this analysis all the time for every single chapter, just so we have an idea what the original actually is. Okay, it is time now to talk a little bit about the number 5, and then we'll take a break. So this is a slide from before. Let me go back one slide and ask everyone to look at the first character in lines 1, 2, and 3. So remember that shape, remember these lines, the way that they are put together. Then come to the slide for the numbers. Look up 5 in the numerals and notice that it's the character here. So previously, what I said was that, well, 1, 2, and 3 in Mandarin are very easy. They're the easiest characters to get to know because they're simple. All it is 1 horizontal line, 2 horizontal lines, and 3 horizontal lines. You do want to make sure that you get the width of the line right, because that denotes the orientation of up and down. So 1, 2, and 3, those are easy. And what I said then is that, well, the other characters are not as easy. So you won't get, for instance, a number 4 with the with 4 lines instead of 3, etc. Now you do get 5, which is, if you think about it, it's actually composed of 5 lines. It's 3 horizontal lines across, 2 vertical lines up and down, for a total of 5. And once you get to know that character, you can further extend your knowledge by combining it with the character for 10, which is at the bottom here. So 10 looks like a cross. Now, the sequence that you put them together has an effect. And what I mean is that if you put 10 in front of 5, 15, that's 15. But if you do it the other way, 5 in front of 10, that's 50. So by sort of a simple trick of this particular slide, you can pretty easily master the number 5. Now there's a little bit more to it than that. You can also go off of your knowledge of 50 here, the 5 here followed by the 10, it's like 5 times 10. Then you actually have enough in this slide to go from 50 to 59. So when you want to say 51, you simply put 1, add the character for 1 after the 10 here. So that becomes 51, 51. And then so on for the other numbers. You get 52, 53, 54, all the way up to 59. And indeed, you've got everything you need in this particular slide to go from 1 to 99. So everything here will give you, any number that you want to express, that you want to write in Mandarin from 1 to 99. So for instance, if you wanted to write 76, you would go to the 70 here, which is 7 plus the character for 10, and then you would find the character for 6, and you would add that character to the end of it. Now suddenly you can do 76, Spirit of 76, or the gas station 76. So it's a similar situation with the other ones. Some significant ones. So looking down here further, we've got 80. So for some Chinese people who put great stock in lucky numbers, they will put 8 and 80 together, so 88, which sounds like prosperity, abundance and prosperity. Phonetically sounds similar to that in Chinese, so they like 88. That's lucky. And indeed, if you look around town, look at Chinese restaurants, you may find one that has a number 88 in their name, and that's the reason. So that's my quick lesson for everyone on the numbers in Mandarin. It's a repeat of a previous presentation. It's just that we happen to have the number 5 in this one, so I bring it up again. And now you know how to use it, and perhaps it will come in handy. Let's move on. So next, we're going to delve into the first 3 lines, which are all about the 5 colors, 5 sounds, and 5 flavors. So the first line we're going to explore is a line that says, the 5 colors make one blind in the eyes. So it's important for us to start off on the right foot and understand exactly what this is saying, beginning with the 5 colors. So cool little coincidence today in that earlier, Alex, in his presentation, brought up the issue, the expression of the 5 religions. In the Guandao, oftentimes they talk about the 5 religions. So here we've got 5 colors, 5 sounds, and 5 flavors. Now, we all know that there are more than 5 colors, certainly more than 5 sounds, more than 5 flavors. So the 5 here, the number 5, oftentimes is interpreted literally, but was not meant to be interpreted literally. Not a literal 5, but a multitude. In the same way, the 5 religions, you would basically reveal how little you know about world religions if you try to categorize the 5 exactly and just shoehorn 5 religions that happen to come to mind into the 5 slots. That's not the intention. Same here. So if the 5 colors are not literally 5 colors, you can probably name 5 colors now, like red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. That's it. You've got 5. And then someone will say, what about purple? Okay, well, that's another color too. I guess I have one more. Maybe 6 colors. And then there's also, black and white, different shades. There's brown, there's magenta, cyan. There's all kinds of different colors. There's pink. What about that, right? So let's immediately detach from this idea that we have to find exactly 5 colors to fit. That was never the intention, and it's not where our effort will be best expended. So the 5 colors, what are they? And what do we mean by colors? Well, they're metaphorical, they're not literal. And the 5 colors represent the distractions, temptations, and seductions of the material world. So if you think about a kaleidoscope, the toy kaleidoscope that you can look through and see these colorful patterns changing, beautiful. Well, it's basically saying that the material world has so many things in it, so many sights and sounds, it's like a kaleidoscope. So many of these colorful things in the material world are in fact distractions, temptations, and seductions. So if you stare at the 5 colors, the quote unquote 5 colors for too long, you end up being confused, lost, disoriented, and indeed spiritually blinded. So in the West, a lot of times we talk about green as a color of money. So for instance, you might say in your daily expression, hey, you gotta show me some green. And when you say show me some green, you're sort of like saying similar to Jerry Maguire, show me the money, right? Show me some green, show me the money, same thing, because we've come to accept that money in that particular context can be represented by the color green. Now, that's not always the case. Other times, we use the color green to indicate, to stand for, metaphorically, an awareness about environmental issues. So we talk about green energy. We don't mean money energy. We're talking about sustainable energy, renewable energy. So the colors can stand for many different things in many different contexts. All I'm saying now is that when we use green as the color of money, it's a similar way as when the ancients were talking about the 5 colors. So the 5 colors are like green for money, but extended beyond just money, beyond wealth. So the 5 colors also cover fame and fortune, power, position, prestige, and so on. Now I realize fortune is sort of a repeat of wealth and money, but as a writer, I find it very difficult to resist the temptation of alliteration. Alliteration is when you start out with the same letter. Fame and fortune, power, position, and prestige kind of rolls off the tongue. So remember, the 5 colors are meant to be the distractions, temptations, and seductions of the material world, not just 5 of them, but a whole bunch of them. That's the bottom line. So what is the effect of the 5 colors? Let's explore. 目盲. So the character mu means eyes. The character mang means blind. So eyes blind. So if I were to literally translate or transcribe the first line, character by character, I would get 5 colors make a person, eyes, blind. So that's almost like a English sentence. But when you translate, your goal is to seek the closest English sentence that'll still sound like it more or less flows, similar to the way that people would speak. So let's talk about what the eyes are. Like colors, not really being colors, but meaning distractions, temptations, and seductions. The eyes are not really eyes. The eyes here are also metaphorical. They refer not to your physical vision, not your physical eyes, but spiritual outlook. And if you like, you can also say the eyes are the spiritual perceptions of the world. That's fine. That's okay. And we often use the context of spiritual eyes or spiritual vision when we talk about living one's life and being able to see where you're going. So when we talk about that, we're not necessarily talking about, the other day I was driving in this heavy fog. Heavy fog, the fog was so heavy I couldn't see where I was going. Well, that's the physical aspects of it. oftentimes when people say they want to see where they're going in life, they're not talking about an actual path, but they're talking about the direction, what they want to, how they want to take their life to the next level, to the next destination in the journey, so to speak. So that's what the eyes are. Not actual eyes, but spiritual outlook, spiritual vision, spiritual sight. You know, pick and choose the one that works better for you. Now, the bottom line for line 1 is that all the colors that are not really colors in the material world, working separately and together, have a spiritually blinding effect. So when I came into contact with this particular teaching in the Tao, after that point, I began to notice that wherever I looked, it seemed that oftentimes people who had what I thought was everything, you know, they had money, they have fame, they have privilege, they had everything. They were oftentimes the ones that needed happiness the most because they didn't have any. That somehow all the good things that people thought were worthy of pursuit did not make them happy. So that was kind of strange. Then I saw so many winners of lotteries, you know, millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, you know, eventually the majority of them eventually become bankrupt. And they say that the lottery, that sudden wealth, has ruined their lives. And I thought, what? Majority? Really? Come on. It can't be that. But then I looked into it, did some research online. Yep, it really is the majority. It really is over half. So more often than not, the people who have this sudden windfall of great fortune, it turns out to be not so great after all, because it brings them misery and suffering. So bottom line, all the colors in the material world have a spiritually blinding effect. And if you are spiritually blind, it is difficult to see where you are spiritually going. So that's why when I say when someone has been blinded in this fashion, we may say he has lost his way in life. So certainly I would also suggest that this is something that we would like to avoid, so that hopefully when you get great fortune that just happens in your life, you will be able to handle it in a very spiritually sound manner, that you will prevent the glare of the positive fortune from blinding you spiritually, so that you can still see where you're going, you can handle it, you can utilize the wealth or fame or whatever in the best possible way. So a good idea to be prepared before the good fortune strikes. Let's move on to the 5 sounds. So in Mandarin, 五音. So if the 5 colors are not literally 5 colors, then the 5 sounds are not literally the 5 sounds. So think of them as the audio counterparts to the 5 colors. So the 5 colors, of course, as I said, are the many distractions, temptations, and seductions in the material world. So here, the 5 sounds also have a negative context, just like the 5 colors. It's the negative kind of human communication that, like the 5 colors, can be distracting, tempting, or seductive. So how can human communication be seductive? Well, when it's untrue flattery that are designed to manipulate you, control you, that can be very seductive, because your ego would like to believe what people are saying about how great you are. And you can easily fall into that trap of going along with them. Everybody's saying I'm great, I must be great. Tempting, think about sales. Think about the sales pitch, making a product seem so desirable that you absolutely must have it. So how about distraction? Well, this could cover a lot of ground. When people are arguing, when they engage in gossip, spreading rumors, that can be very distracting. You want to find out, oh, everybody knows. I got to find out too. What's going on? Tell me, tell me. Very distracting. But all of these can be very negative on you, just as the 5 colors are very negative on your spiritual outlook. So, to kind of summarize, the 5 sounds may be the sounds of flattery that seem pleasing at first, sounds of gossip or rumors that make you feel like you're in on a secret. Yeah, I feel great because now I know about this. Not everybody knows, but I know. Sounds of vicious criticisms, etc. that can distract you. It probably won't tempt you or seduce you, but it can be very distracting. It can be enraging. That is, it can make you fly off the handle, hit the ceiling, etc. So those are the 5 sounds. So let's talk about the effect of the 5 sounds. To be deaf in the ears means losing your clarity of judgment. So a lot of times in English, we say someone's communication is tone deaf. What we mean by that is that this person who's saying something has no awareness about the effect that the communication will cause on other people. So we call that, we say that's tone deaf. So to be deaf in the ears is similar. It means that you've lost your clarity of judgment, your awareness of what the communication actually says or what the effects are of that communication. So, pleasing words, in chapter 81 of the Tao Te Ching, we spoke about beautiful but untrue words. Words that you want to hear. Words about how you are already perfect and you don't need to work on anything. You don't want to fall into the trap of striving to better yourself because you are already perfect. So that can have a numbing effect on your self-awareness. You come to believe your own hype. So this is another distinguishing feature between the authentic Tao and what I find sometimes in New Age literature. New Age literature will be the source for what I just said about you already being perfect, so you don't have to do anything. Boy, I love to hear that. Now, having cultivated and studied the Tao, I know it's untrue. But I do know that there are many people out there who read about how they're already perfect, agree with it, not alone, in agreement, and feel great until the rubber meets the road. In the actual test of living life, in the practical everyday realities, when they come up short, then they have to come up with another way to explain their shortcoming. And it just goes on and on and on. That's a very destructive way. It's not the Tao. It's something that makes the Tao different from that particular kind of New Age belief. So moving on, let's talk about the 5 flavors. So by now, you know that the 5 colors are not the 5 colors, the 5 sounds are not the 5 sounds. So it's easy to guess that the 5 flavors are not the 5 flavors. So here, we're not talking about, salty, sugary, sweet, spicy, bitter, etc. None of those. It's not just the 5, it's not just the number 5, and it's not flavors, not exactly flavors. It's a superset of stimulations, sensations. So the 5 flavors are not just about eating and drinking, like colors and sounds, they stand for physical pleasures in general. So think of it as your taste in various aspects of life. So, I find language so fascinating because oftentimes I find similar ways of expressing something between Mandarin and English. So here we're talking about the 5 flavors being sort of a generic stand-in for all the different sensations. In English, you can talk about taste. So for instance, someone, if you look at, say, a friend, and she has ended up with a very supporting partner in life, and everybody likes him, you might say, oh, she has good taste in men. Or if she's very fashionable, she's very elegant, you may say that she has good taste in fashion. Well, in either case, the man and the clothing, the fashion, the accessories, these are not food or drink. But we use taste as a generic metaphor all around about your taste in everything. Your taste in art, your taste in music, and yes, your taste in restaurants. It's about food too. It's about drinks as well. It covers all the bases. Okay, so, and there are other utilizations of the number 5 as well. There's the 5 elements. I talk about that in my books, but I am very careful to avoid the trap that some people fall into, which is to jam everything into 5 categories. And a lot of times it just don't work. I still hang on to the 5 elements as an interesting way to think about the world. Sometimes it does come in handy. At the same time, I do take note of the people that misuse the 5 this or the 5 that, 5 religions, 5 elements. They've all been misused. Got to be careful. So let's continue on with the 5 flavors. The gluttony and overindulgence. So yeah, when it comes to food and drinks, we'll talk about the 5 flavors. This can be metaphorical for gluttony, overindulgence, and it can actually be even more severe than just gluttony and overindulgence. It can be about addiction. So the 5 flavors in extreme form can manifest as addictions, and addictions can ruin your life. Not just, numb you, but it can be very destructive, like a wrecking ball, like a giant wrecking ball in your life. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about 口爽. And this is the one that I indicated, requires some additional explanation, especially certainly for people who don't know any Chinese, but also for people who know modern Mandarin, but not classical Chinese, not ancient Chinese. So, pinyin shuang. This is a very frequently used character in modern Mandarin. If you were to ask someone how they're feeling, and then they say shuang, that means they're feeling good. They're feeling comfortable, they're feeling refreshed, overall sense of well-being. So when someone says shuang, almost always today, it's a good thing. They're enjoying themselves, they're happy. So in modern Mandarin, this character has a positive context. It's about a feeling of comfort and wellness. Applied to the mouth, it would mean refreshing. So you could literally say 口爽 in modern Mandarin, and it would mean a positive thing, like the drink that you had. Hey, that was a boba drink that has a minty flavor. So when you take a drink from it, you feel refreshed. Or perhaps it's a bubble gum with a flavor that you like. So as you chew on it, you are enjoying yourself. So in either case, you could say 口爽, and that would mean that it's refreshing to the sense of taste. But that's not what it means here. It's actually the opposite of what it means here. It's an ancient context, no longer used in modern Mandarin. It's an ancient context that's negative, not positive. So people forget that this used to be the way that a lot of times in the Tao Te Ching, many characters that were used 2,500 years ago mean the exact same thing today. And then we see that some characters have sort of a related meaning, that they're used differently now, but you can sort of see how they have evolved over 2,500 years. And then a few exceptions, this being one of them, have the exact opposite meaning of what they used to be. So let's explore that opposite meaning, the negative context. So what do you mean if it's a negative context from a long time ago? Well, it's like a blunder or a mistake. So as I said, most of the time that context doesn't exist anymore. Occasionally you will still see it, rarely you will still see it in modern Mandarin. For instance, when you say someone has 爽约, two characters, 爽 is what we're talking about here. 约 means a date or an appointment. So 爽约, that doesn't mean comfort or a sense of well-being for the date or appointment. Far from it. It means that you stood someone up. It means that you missed the date or appointment, that you are late or you never show up. And it's a blunder or mistake. Certainly, that's a negative context. So this is one of the signs where we know, someone who's well-versed in Mandarin will know that it's indeed possible for the ancient context to be a negative context. And that's what it is here. So in this passage, applied to the mouth, it means losing the sense of taste, similar to ears losing the sense of hearing, or eyes losing sight. So now it all makes sense. Blindness, deafness, and being tasteless, or being numb. So this also paints the importance, this underlines the importance of knowing classical ancient Chinese when attempting to translate something from such a long time ago. Okay, so let's go back to 口爽. So let's recognize that, just like the eyes going blind, the ears going deaf, it's not literally losing your sense of taste in the mouth. It's greater than that. It's metaphorical to apply to different aspects of life. So similar to the previous two lines, losing one's taste means more than the physical sense. It's about being oversaturated, overstimulated. So sensory stimuli no longer have the same effect as before. So it's about being jaded. Now, I talked about addiction just a moment ago, and we know that this is very real when it comes to physical addiction. That is, when you get addicted to something, some substance, whether it's alcohol or something even more hardcore, you start taking greater and greater quantities of that substance in order to get the same buzz that you got before. So a small amount, a relatively small amount in the beginning will get you high. Later on, it doesn't do it anymore. So you have to up your dosage. you have to increase the amount. A drunkard, initially may get drunk off of just a bottle of wine, for instance. Later on, though, he realizes that one bottle doesn't do it anymore. He needs much more powerful liquor, or he needs the same wine as before, but maybe 2 bottles or 3 this time. So it's real. This is very real. In life, this may be the worst fate of all. Why? Because if you are jaded about life itself, it means you've lost your zest for life. It means life is no longer exciting or even the least bit interesting. You feel only boredom. So, to me, that's almost like a fate worse than death. And it's because of this. That is why I am very cautious when it comes to people complaining, it's so boring. If I ever find myself thinking that life is boring, I'm going to need to examine myself very carefully to discover how I got jaded. And what I will probably find is, according to line 3, it's because I've encountered the 5 flavors and I've allowed them to affect me in a very negative way. Okay. So as you can see, we're going through these lines in great detail. We're dissecting the metaphors, and we're explaining them, the way that they were intended when they were written. So I hope that this is something that's going to be helpful to everybody to increase the depth of your understanding of this particular chapter, and later on, the overall Tao Te Ching as well. So let's go to line 4. So we're done with the 5 this and 5 that. We're done with the 5 sounds, the 5 colors, the 5 flavors, but there's a little bit more about the material world. The previous 3 lines about the different aspects of the material world that makes the world itself such a place of temptation and distractions and seductions and so forth. Now, these 2 lines we're talking about are activities within the material world. So let's go to racing and hunting makes one wild in the heart. Now, before I actually dissect the first 2 characters, let me say wild in the heart in English can inadvertently have a positive context, like being passionate. So I gotta tell you, here in this context, it's all negative. There's nothing positive here about being wild in the heart. If it helps, think of wild in the heart, 发狂, the last 2 characters, as going crazy, going nuts, going insane. I hesitate to say that as well because in the Western culture, sometimes crazy is seen in a positive light as well. Like, let's get crazy, crazy as in fun and parties and sociable and sometimes, like unconventional and quirky. You're so crazy, you're just crazy. You say that in a good way, but in this context, it's about insanity. It's about being non-functional. It's about doing things that hurt you and the people that you love and care about. No, so not the good crazy, not the good wild. Okay, so let's get back to the first 2 characters. 驰骋. These 2 characters are no longer used in modern Mandarin, or perhaps I should say rarely used. What do they mean? To gallop or race around on horseback. So we're not actually talking about racing around on horseback. Just like all previous lines, the first 3 lines are never about the eyes, the ears, and the taste buds. Here, when we use this particular term to gallop or race around the horseback, what we're actually talking about is the general frantic rush in life. In the material world, what we oftentimes call the rat race. What do we mean by the rat race? It means social competition. It means a dog-eat-dog world where you don't care about the consequences of your actions. You just want to get ahead. You just want to get ahead of other people, regardless of the harm that you do to them. That's the rat race. And sometimes you feel like you have to participate in the rat race just to keep up with everyone else, just to not fall behind too much. So that's what we're talking about here, racing, like the rat race. So like I said, there are many times when in English, our daily usage, our vernacular, our regular everyday expressions, a lot of them have correspondence in the ancient Chinese. You wouldn't think they do, but they do. So, rushing around, trying to get ahead of others, particularly in some sort of competition or rivalry. Doing that will always spike up your stress level. So we know this to be true. Even just driving on the road, when people are just racing around trying to get someplace, when other poor drivers get in your lane, or when you see people just like, changing 2, 3, 4 lanes at the same time, etc. Very dangerous. Definitely, the stress level goes right up. So when you engage in that, and to an extreme, before you know it, you've gone very far away from the Tao. You've strayed far from the Tao. So racing is a negative context as well. Let's move on. Okay, then we have 田猎. 田猎, right? 田猎, here we go. 拼音田猎 sounds like 田猎. So it's not 田来. The pinyin will sometimes produce misleading words that happen to match a known English word, but it's 田猎. So what it means is hunting, but the first character here, 田, it's no longer used in modern Mandarin. The second character, 猎, that's used all the time. So like racing on horseback, hunting in this context is also extrapolated and generalized. It means any kind of pursuit, not just hunting animals. And the pursuit in the material world is all about materialistic goals, things that you can get. So, like the rat race, hunting, the pursuit in the material world can lead to the erosion of one's spiritual cultivation. So as I mentioned, out of the first 4 characters in this line, 猎, the last one, is the only character that is still commonly used in modern Mandarin. All of the other characters have gone by the wayside, and they're used less and less. All right, moving on. Now, I want to cover this part here that says, make one wild in the heart. So, like I said, when we began to cover this line, I said that, wild at heart, this is not about being passionate, being loving, being wildly in love. This is about going crazy. So you could literally translate that line, these 5 characters, as makes one's heart go crazy. Now, crazy not because of romance, but crazy because of extreme levels of desires that are blinding and deafening. Blinding, deafening, and numbing, I should also add. So, a very bad kind of consequence. So in life, the dog-eat-dog kind of competition and the blind ambition to satisfy desires can exert a powerful influence on your mind in two ways. So this is where I want to be very specific about the negative consequences. Number one, your single-minded focus gives you tunnel vision, so you lose sight of what's really around you. That is, you are focused on the hunt, you are focused on the race, so everything else, you don't even notice what's really going on in your life. Sometimes you don't notice until it's too late. Example, you may be neglecting your health, so your single-minded focus gives you tunnel vision, so you lose sight of what's really important, maintaining yourself in an optimal state of health. So later on, when you realize that there are very adverse, severe consequences to deterioration of your health, it's too late. So that's number one. Tunnel vision, lose sight of what's really around you. Number two is related but not the same. You also lose the sense of perspective and blow things out of proportion due to your attachment. So even things that you can see, you may not see them in the proper perspective or the correct sense of proportion. So number one, it makes you not be able to see everything. Number two, even the things you can see, you blow them out of proportion due to attachment. So those are the two different ways that the powerful influence of racing and hunting can be very bad for you, very negative for your mind. Let's talk about the next line, and again in great detail. So we have 难得之货, goods that are difficult to acquire, and this requires some explanation as well. So if we break down the characters one by one, 难, the first character we have difficult or hard. 得, we have to get, to acquire, to take. 知, we have the apostrophe s. 货, goods or merchandise. So altogether, we're talking about goods or merchandise that are hard or difficult to acquire or obtain. So there are two kinds of material things that are thought of as difficult to acquire. So again, I want to be very clear on the two different kinds. Number one, this is the easy one, high value objects, jewelry, diamonds, gemstones, precious metals, and sometimes they're all set together in a very artistic work of jewelry. It could be works of art. Works of art can be worth millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. So these things, these objects are rare and therefore hard to acquire. The reason why I go into this detail is because sometimes 难得之货 gets translated as rare goods. In aspect, in number one, that is indeed what they are, rare goods. But goods that are difficult to acquire isn't always about number one, could be about number two. Objects that are relatively common, not rare, like diamonds, but the difficulty is in acquisition is in terms of quantity. So the easiest way that I can make everyone understand is money. Because money is not rare. There's money everywhere. So what is so difficult to acquire about money? Well, why do people always pursue money? Why are people always in pursuit of money? It's because the difficulty has to do with acquiring a massive quantity that would indicate sufficient wealth. So difficult to accumulate, you might say, difficult to amass into a great amount. So though both of these are difficult to acquire, one, difficult to acquire an individual item, two, difficult to acquire in great quantity. So I want to make sure that's clear. So that's the reason why when I see a translation that says rare goods, make one cause damage or whatever, rare goods this, rare goods that, I look at that and then I'll say to myself, well, obviously this particular translator does not have an in-depth understanding of the Tao Te Ching. So let's move on. Let's talk about the ending of this particular line here. 行房. So the last character there, the second from last character there, is still commonly used today. It means to traverse, to travel, to go, to move. But the last character is no longer used in modern Mandarin. What it means is that you want to go or behave in such a way as to harm oneself or others. Think of it as running into an obstacle in your life journey. So depending on the obstacle itself, it may be a road bump, that causes you to, go up and down, or it may be a wall that is in your way, making your path a dead end. So either way, goods that are difficult to acquire has a negative context causing you to behave in such a way as to harm yourself or others, or to create an obstacle in your path, in your life journey. So the purpose here from Lao Tzu is to spell out in no uncertain terms that the overzealous pursuit of material things is harmful and contrary to the Tao. And I want to emphasize overzealous here because the pursuit of material things in accordance with the Tao can happen as well, and that has a positive effect on everybody. Positive effect on yourself because you are gaining in prosperity and abundance, positive for other people who benefit by your actions. So here, the overzealous pursuit of material things is especially bad because of the last bullet point. If you only ruin your own life, well, that's one thing. It's, after all, your life to deal with as you please. So if you hurt yourself, if you hurt only yourself, harm only yourself, that's really your own business, and hopefully you've learned a lesson from that. But the problem is this. When you are pursuing goods that are difficult to acquire in this overzealous manner, it seems there's always collateral damage for loved ones. That the people around you that you care about, they always get hurt as well. And it's not their fault. It's something that you have caused them. So for that reason, if not for yourself, then for your family, your friends, and your loved ones, you want to cultivate and understand the Tao so that you can figure out a good way to refrain from hunting, from racing in the material world sense, and overzealously pursuing goods that are difficult to obtain. Excellent. We're nearing the end of the line-by-line analysis because, after all, this chapter is only 7 lines. So the next bit, so I'm not actually sure that we can finish every single line today. We may be able to get to line 7, and then we'll have to do our summary for today. But I think we have enough today to do a good summary. So let's take a look at this character from line 6. So line 6 says, therefore the sages care for the stomach and not the eyes. So by now, by following the previous discussion, you should be like, oh, I know the stomach is not really the stomach and the eyes are not really the eyes. You will be absolutely correct. Let's talk about that. So stomach, this character, fu. Meaning, stomach in this context means sustenance, or the basics of life, the bare necessities. So the sages care for the stomach. That means the sages care for the basic necessities of life. So stomach in this case has nothing to do with greed or gluttony or overindulgence. Nothing to do with eating too much at the buffet. This is about the means of livelihood, the means of living the simple life. Okay, so there's one emphasis that I want to make here, and this is related to my previous remark about about some New Age teachings departing from the Tao. This line points to a difference between East and West. Real sages focus on practical, everyday things. Western students of the Tao may have their heads in the clouds. I do see this once in a while. Just like when I was talking about how there are some aspects of New Age teachings that depart from the Tao, like you are already perfect. Other times, I see a difference where actual sages from authentic traditions are very mindful of everyday realities, practical everyday things, and want to start by, for instance, cleaning out the immediate environment to simplify and streamline everything. These are important. On the other hand, some Western students of the Tao who have learned from the negative, destructive sources that I mentioned may have their heads in the clouds, thinking that it's all about these very ethereal, airy-fairy kind of concepts that only make them feel really good about themselves, but create no actual difference in their lives. That's not actually the Tao. And I know that kind of Tao is actually quite popular. I know that I will never appeal to people who belong to that audience. Why not? Well, they're not thinking about bettering themselves. They just want to feel good. So, having talked about the stomach, let's talk about the eyes. So, in Mandarin, it's pronounced mu. Eyes in this context means the cause of temptations. What the eye sees, the heart will desire. Now, that's one way to look at it. Here's another way that's also good. Another good interpretation is to refer back to the 5 colors. The eyes see all the colorful acquisitions one can pursue. The mind is therefore confused. The spirit is therefore disoriented, loses its way. So the sages are careful with the eyes. They care for the stomach. They don't care for the eyes. But what that means is that they actively manage the eyes or the perception that can lead to desires. Or you can say they guard against it. They are cautious with it. They're careful with it. They don't care to let it run rampant. They don't care to unleash the eyes to do whatever it wants, to take in whatever it wants. Indeed, they want to control it. They want to use it in the appropriate way with discipline. Okay, we are now in the very last line of Tao Te Ching 12. As expected, we are approaching the end of our time together. So, as usual, I'm going to have to jump ahead. Now, let's do the summary. So, I keep talking about looking at the world through the eyes of the Tao, or spiritual outlook, spiritual vision, spiritual foresight. So what do I mean by that? Here's exactly what I mean. I want to use this metaphor. I want to try this metaphor on everybody. As you were driving today, or perhaps in the past few days, you've seen what happens on the road when drivers swerve and speed, cut people off, express road rage with their hands and a particular finger on other drivers, and indeed causing road rage too, causing other people to also get really mad. So, question to ask when you see a situation like that is, well, when someone is like swerving back and forth, trying to get to wherever they were going quickly, how much time do they actually save? You know, there's been times before when I see drivers like that, you know, driving like crazy, and then at the next intersection, you know, it's a red light, and I pull up right next to them. And I'm always, you know, I'm pulling up with a smile. And if I catch them looking my way, I will smile. Hi. Salute, you know. Me driving in a relaxed manner, catching up to that horrible driver, swerving around, that's always one of the little delights of life. Now, that's number one. Number two, number one is they may not get there any faster, or only a few seconds as to make no difference. Number two, suppose they do get there faster by a few minutes. What then? Well, from knowing people like that, I know that chances are excellent that they'll drive like crazy to get somewhere, and when they get there, they waste the extra time that they have obtained by virtue of driving like a mad person. So then, when that is the case, I want to use that as a metaphor for life. And I want to equate driving to the rat race that we were talking about. So, number one, some fail to get ahead despite all the effort. The effort meaning the strain, the struggle, the stress. Like I said, I really like alliteration. So that's equivalent to the people who are driving like crazy, but are stopped at the intersection by the red lights as you pull up slowly alongside. So in life, that can happen as well. People try so hard, but they don't get any further ahead than they would have otherwise. Then let's take a look at the other case. Those that actually do get ahead, that is, those just like the people who have shaved a few minutes off their drive and they get to their destination a few minutes early. So what? What's it all for? What price did they have to pay? We know the price on the road is danger, the potential to get into an accident. In life, it is very similar. The people that do actually get ahead, quote unquote, what was the price they have to pay? You know, perhaps it's health, like I suggested earlier. Perhaps it's time spent watching children grow up, time that you will never get back. So, conclusion, it would be much better to follow the Tao. And what I mean by that, in terms of the journey of life, is that you should relax on your way to the destination, see the sights along the way, notice what they are, and arrive in good spirits, no stress, and in plenty of time. So this would apply both to driving on the streets, on the highways, on the freeways, and traversing in the journey of life.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜翻一鞠躬。We're done, everybody. Thank you so much.